As ever, I'm always delighted to get comments on the videos I make, and somebody has pointed out that Luigi Mangione's attack on Brian Thompson was justified. I don't think that's true. Luigi Mangione, if he is guilty, allegedly, he seems to have shot Brian Thompson. If that is so, then he is guilty of a major crime, of murder. Now, there may be extenuating and mitigating circumstances. He may not be in full control and so on. There may indeed be other issues which get in the way of a guilty verdict, so we shouldn't jump to conclusions. But there's a huge effort to justify the killing simply because people don't like the concept of health insurance. I entirely understand that issue. There's a difference, I think, between justifying something, justifying an appalling act, and explaining how an appalling act took place. There's also a way in which explanations become a form of justification. But I think one should look at Luigi Mangione's actions in the light of the actions of the conspirators who killed Julius Caesar on the Ides of March in 44 BC. This is a catastrophic failure for Marcus Junius Brutus and the conspirators, which led to political chaos, civil war, and ultimately their deaths. And first of all, Brutus tried to frame Caesar's assassination as an act of liberating Rome from tyranny, drawing on the traditions of his own family, and going back to defeating and killing the last tyrant, the last king of Rome. His Stoic philosophy underpinned his belief that Caesar's death was necessary to restore freedom, although he almost certainly was the son of Caesar's lover, Servilia, and he may indeed even have been Caesar's natural son. Brutus and the conspirators addressed the Senate, portraying themselves as the saviours of the Republic. However, they failed to convince the broader population, who largely admired Caesar as a populist leader and a military hero. One of the features which comes out in the stories is the wailing of the Jewish community because Caesar was so supportive of that community. And also the eruption of Mount Etna, which clouded the sky and meant that the sky was an extraordinary colour for days after Caesar's death. The conspirators allowed Mark Antony, Caesar's loyal ally, to deliver a eulogy at his funeral, and Antony's dramatic oration, including the recitation of Caesar's will, which left wealth to the Roman people and announced Caesar's nephew Octavius as his heir, which maybe isn't something Antony wanted to emphasize, turned public sentiment against the assassins. The funeral incited riots, with the mob burning the conspirators' houses and driving them from Rome. A great mistake, if you wanted power. Brutus and Cassius didn't immediately seize control of the city. Another great mistake. They didn't seize control of the Senate or the Treasury. This left a power vacuum that Antony exploited. They underestimated Antony's cunning and influence and failed to neutralize him as a political rivalry. Although the Senate, under pressure from both sides, granted amnesty to the assassins, they also ratified Caesar's acts and decisions, preserving his reforms and the loyalty of his supporters. And this paradoxical compromise weakened again the conspirators' position by acknowledging Caesar's legacy while sparing his killers. Brutus and Cassius fled Rome to gather forces, leaving the city under the control of Antony and the pro-Caesar faction. Disunity plagued the conspirators, who struggled to coordinate their efforts during the subsequent civil war, and particularly leaving Cicero in Rome to whinge about how inadequate they were. The assassination triggered a series of conflicts between Caesar's allies, led by Antony and Octavian, and the assassins, and the second triumvirate of Antony, Octavian, and Lepidus was formed to avenge Caesar, to consolidate power, marking the end of the Republic, and each of Antony, Octavian, and Lepidus had agreed to sacrifice one of their friends, in each case in the bloodbath that was going to ensue. That is how Cicero ended up losing his head. The point is that if you're going to do something which is questionable and immoral, like assassination, then you need to retain power. And Luigi Mangione has been arrested and he is standing trial. He's not in a position of power, and he's in a position which is comparable, frankly, to that of Brutus. No matter how, no matter what chop logic you use to justify murder, you can't capitalize on that when you are in a position of weakness. I don't think you can justify murder in any circumstances. But being on trial doesn't give you a lot of leverage. The Battle of Philippi in 42 BC, where Brutus and Cassius, commanding the Republican forces, were decisively defeated by Antony and Octavian. Cassius commits suicide, mistakenly believing his forces had been routed. Brutus being cornered after the second battle, also took his own life. His last words reportedly expressing despair over the failure of his cause. But many were hunted down, killed by the triumvirs, their property confiscated, their families disgraced, and Decimus Brutus, another key assassin, captured and executed in Gaul in 43 BC. The point is that Cicero, initially supported by Octavian, hoping to use him as a counterbalance to Antony, Octavian went all the way down to Naples to see Cicero. But Cicero had delivered the Philippics, this series of speeches condemning Antony, which further incited the conflict. Cicero underestimated Octavian's ambitions and his ruthlessness, and Antony insisted on Cicero's death as retribution for his speeches. Cicero was captured, executed in 43. His head and his hands were displayed in the Forum, symbolizing Antony's vengeance and the triumph of autocracy over the Republic. Now, the point is, first of all, this attempt to justify murder or explain murder was pointless because the assassins had failed to cement power, and they had no cohesive strategy for governing Rome after the assassination. They failed to anticipate the public's reaction or to secure the city. There may be people who sympathize with someone like Luigi Mangione. I'm sure chronic back pain is appalling. The failures of the health insurance system are appalling. But you can't justify murder. And without a clear plan, you can't present it as a positive. It's naive. In the same way that Brutus was naive. Brutus believed that removing Caesar would automatically restore the Republic, ignoring the deep structural changes that had already occurred in Roman society that would make that return impossible. Luigi Mangione's action is not going to change the health insurance system. It's started a conversation, but there's many conversations going on the internet. That's what the internet does. It's a babbling place. It's a babbling brook, and very interesting babbling it is, but it is nevertheless a brook. And, the conspirators' failure to consolidate power, to think ahead, to misjudge Antony's capabilities, to underestimate Caesar's popularity, doomed their cause in the same way that somebody who's been arrested for murder is not likely to be championing the debate that he has started. That debate will continue, but it's a side issue. It's a babbling brook. And we in Britain have to look at that brook very carefully. We should go fishing in that brook, because maybe we need to guard ourselves against the Americanization of healthcare in Britain. But murder is not the answer, just as murder was not the answer in at the end of the Roman Republic. Murder did not solve anything. Murder produced tyranny, the tyranny of the empire and the reign of Augustus and the Claudians. That was the result of Caesar's assassination.